Hello, hello. Welcome back to an episode of Book Wormies. I am your host, Aaron Helton, ready to take you down the road of nonfiction books today. Today I've got a fun book that actually holds a place in my heart personally. It is called Lifting Heavy Things by Laura Khoudari, with the subtext reading Healing Trauma One Rep at a Time. Now, anybody who knows me, before I get into the specifics of the page count and what I liked about this book, I really enjoy the gym. I love pushing myself and constant self-improvement, and that is absolutely something that's a core to who I am. So when I saw this book, I actually read it right after The Body Keeps the Score. And I don't think I've quite had that episode yet. Maybe it's come out by now. If not, it'll come out in the future. But I read this alongside that book, and Lifting Heavy Things it just really resonated with me. And the reason for that is I started my fitness journey about 19 or so, 18, 19 years old. And now at a current age of 26, I'm about 8, almost 9 years into my fitness journey. And I've done so many different things. When it comes to fitness, I use that example when talking about mental health as a relationship with yourself. And when it comes to improving your spirituality, your mental capacity, your social capacity, I pull a lot of inspiration from just the concept of fitness. And so to have a book that does exactly that, which is what Laura Khoudari did through this book, talking about healing your trauma and processing it through somatic tools, I really, really appreciated this book. Honestly, it resonated with me so hard. So one of the things that, as you all know, I like shorter books or books that I like to read slowly. This book, Lifting Heavy Things, had roughly 185 pages or so. And what I liked about it is, I think it's about 13 or 16 chapters. I would have to pull back and check that. But as I do so, I like that it was split into 3 different sections. One being conditions, speaking as if you are about to go and set up for a workout. So what are the conditions that you're working out with today? So what's your starting point? The second being activation. What is the muscle group you're going to be working, like quote unquote muscle group? If it's a specific aspect of your trauma, if it's a specific tool that is being applied in a somatic sense, like, do I want to really focus on sadness and the anxiety that becomes a pit in my stomach? Or do I want to focus on the anger that tends to tense up my shoulders or something like that? The activation. And then she also talks about recovery at the end, which anybody who's really big on fitness understands. Recovery and sleep are the most important parts to growth and the improvement of your muscles. And it's similar here in resting, in mindfulness, in spirituality, in healing trauma. And as I look up, they have a total of 14 chapters, just to pull back to that old question that I had mentioned. But on that note, one of the things I really, really enjoy about this book, first and foremost, is it talks about trauma. And in a lot of books that talk about trauma, as I am a coach that pushes vulnerability in general. And again, disclaimer, not a doctor, not a mental health professional in that sense. So while I enjoy self-help books and trauma books, I am not a spokesperson for the healing process in that sense. But a lot of books that focus on self-help or trauma or something like that, especially when they have an author sharing pieces of their life, a lot of times the author will actually disclose their own trauma and be vulnerable, which I think is an excellent practice. However, I think something in this book is really interesting because the author chooses not to disclose their individual trauma because it's theirs. And in all seriousness, or in all validity, as readers, as strangers, we are not privy to that information. And I agree with that entirely. I think that was beautiful. And so whenever the author talks about their trauma, it's just asterisks. They say, whenever blank happened. And I think this is an excellent way to toe the line of being vulnerable because it does fill that role of sharing that experience, but also not oversharing. And at the same time, allowing the reader automatically, when there's a blank in a sentence, the human mind just puts something in there. So whenever you say, yeah, when the trauma of blank happened, well, you have no information to work with except your own experience. So as I was reading, my own experience of anything that I was going through got plugged in those situations, even though it was the author's story. And so I thought that was incredibly powerful because taking it back to a fitness lens, everybody's a little different. Not everybody's going to be a power lifter or a marathon runner. Everybody's got a different style. Even if you're all working, bicep curls, you're going to have a different range of motion, different rep ranges. And so to look and just automatically have that feeling of, oh, this is what I'm dealing with because my brain just plugged it in. Oh, this is how I curl this weight, essentially. So it was just incredible that it felt hands-on without intending to be, or perhaps it was. But either way, that was something that was just absolutely incredible in this book that I really appreciated. Aside from that, Laura Khoudari does a lot of amazing things in this book, and I honestly can sing her praises because a couple of the things is at the end of each chapter, having activities from something like a muscle activation to a mental health or spiritual practice. Like, hey, feel an emotion in your body, or here's how to do a proper hip hinge and practice feeling your body move. And that's at the end of these chapters interlacing fitness and that healing process, which I think was just expertly done. Additionally, I adore the use of checking in. A lot of times there are moments where we'll have check-in chapters or keynotes at the end of a chapter, similar to the activities that the author put. But in the middle of writing, in the middle of a chapter, you'll just see a sentence, hey, take a minute to just breathe with yourself. It might be after something incredibly traumatic or some large disclosure, or it might be just a large piece of information that makes you think. And so as a reader that already applies this in the sense of, I like to read things slow. If I read a whole paragraph or two or three, I want to sit and stew on it for a second. Having a book that follows that format is just beautiful. And I really appreciated the prompting to be introspective. Finally, just as an example, as I like to do in these books, is kind of pull something out. So I'll just flip around. Let's look at page 100. We talk a little bit about how to move with mindfulness, and specifically talking about, mindfulness is just one part of an embodied movement practice. There's always the practice part, which comes into play whenever your attention inevitably shifts away from the object of focus. And yes, I said inevitably because your attention will waver. And so the author talks about mindfulness as, hey, people think of mindfulness and say, oh yeah, I'm going to sit under a waterfall and meditate for 20, 25 minutes, maybe 2 hours. And it's just simply not that. As somebody that loves to meditate, a lot of times it's just 2 to 5 minutes just sitting with myself, letting thoughts wander and saying, hey, come on back. It's okay watching a thought flow by like a cloud. Sometimes the emotions come up are things you wouldn't associate with meditation either. It could be irritability or anger could come up when you're meditating, but it's just about making the space. But I love that mindfulness and fitness and healing trauma and being present with your emotions and a little bit of just textbook in the sense of information, like talking about the general adaptation response or the way we tolerate stress. This book is interlaced with a lot of really good things. And I absolutely think that this should be read by just about everybody, particularly those that are in trauma and fitness. I really appreciate a lot of personal trainers that I talk to do have an empathetic focus when they train, and they really focus on how are you feeling today? What do you want to work on? And it's less about the specific. A lot of times it's not about the specific muscle group. Sometimes it's just about the stress of life. Like, I just want to feel capable today. Okay, let's push today. Or, I want to take it slow, be a little social, and really just take care of my knees today. It's like, okay, let's do that. But it's just a glorious practice. And I absolutely would implore anybody who's interested in just healing pieces of themselves, or somebody that's interested in fitness, to pick up this book. Again, Lifting Heavy Things by Laura Khoudari. And this is one of my top books. So it's absolutely recommended. With that, thank you as always for following me down the road to nonfiction and reading a little bit with me. And I hope that you enjoyed the book and look forward to next time. Thank you.